Chapter 6. The Price of Bread. "Excuse me, your majesties," a nervous, unimposing voice said, reaching across the king's dreamscape. But it was the jiggling of a watch chain that really pulled him out. "My goodness me, look at the time. They've nearly slept half the day away. Can you hear me in there?" When he opened his lids, the king could just make out the blurry blot of his long-eared underling, head tilted to the side. But he started speaking again, without coming fully into focus. "Ah, yes, well, there you are. Good morning, sire, my lady." "Good morning, Rabbit," the queen served with a sleepy smile. "What is it? What's happened?" the king asked authoritatively, attempting to slide up the wall and out from underneath his wife. No, nothing dire," the white rabbit assured, as he was rushing too briskly for his own cognizance. It's quite interesting, actually. I was just told moments ago that some knights have captured a bandit of some manner. They're holding him outside, awaiting your sentencing." "And where are my daughters?" he asked, rising slower with his bearings. "Oh, they've been awake a while now, I think. The servants were given strict instruction to tiptoe around so as not to wake you prematurely." The rabbit twitched in humor, wiping his monocle. "Last time I saw them, they were either causing or keeping out of trouble somewhere on the grounds. The parents, while searching for them, were concerned with how their girls might choose to cope with the discussion of the night prior. Occupying themselves could have easily been a form of ignoring or numbing the feeling, which made seeing the princesses behaving like children, genuinely enjoying their hobbies, a pleasant surprise. Red was playing croquet, as she did every chance she got. Her skills were improving. She'd often say that if she wasn't a royal, she'd be a professional player, if there were such a thing. It should be mentioned that the game she played used to be very different. In the old days, birds were farmed for the sport. Their wings, feet, and beaks bound to create a living mallet, and swung headfirst into a hedgehog-like creature, something adept at rolling. It's unclear which king halted these abusive practices and made changes to the equipment, but tradition is still alive. Now, wood specially chosen for its strength from a tree coined the croquet is taken by carpenters and made to mirror the animals they replaced. White was crouched in an ocean of petals and stems, as she often was, having repartee with a caterpillar she had disturbed. Abandoning her match in favor of accompanying her father, Red was happy, thrilled, you might say, to leave her sister and mother behind for one-on-one training. When King led Princess through the door, they saw two knights pinning down a lizard as though he was imprisoned in a stockade. A third knight stood next to them, holding a burlap sack full of the presumably seized goods. "Good morning, sir," they greeted in unison. "Gentlemen, good morning," the king reciprocated. "Apologies for the wait, but I'll be extending it a moment longer. I'd like to step aside and give my eldest experience in the daily living and responsibilities she'll have when she's queen. Today will be a lesson in how the decisions we make as leaders affect others, how they frequently yield permanent ramifications. So if you would, kindly address her from now on." "Very good, sir," the single knight complied. "What is this reptile's crime?" Red blurted, confidently grasping control. The question landed awkwardly on deaf ears until one of the knights scolded the suspect. "The princess is talking to you." "I stole, miss," the lizard confessed, head low in guilt and shame. "We caught him sampling the food cellar like a banquet feast," the knight holding the sack said, adding context while sifting through it. "Bread, rice, beans, potatoes, apples." "Thank you, Sir Knight, that will be all," Red cut off. "Apart from learning the magics and the laws of our makers, we also must be well versed in the man-made laws, as dictated by our father the king. Do you know where theft puts you, according to his law?" "The dungeon, ma'am," the lizard mumbled and gulped. "The dungeon, exactly," Red sneered, glaring down her nose at him. "Would you like to know a little fact about me? I've been studying and familiarizing myself with the laws of other kingdoms and faraway places. They're fascinating, but have shown me, with all due respect to my father, that rotting in a cell may not wholly deter you from stealing again. Instead, it gives you a place to plot how not to get caught the next time you do. But I've read that in some of these lands, the punishment for the crime, your crime, is to lob off the hand of the thief. It's a pretty constant reminder, but in the most severe cases, they're unable to do it again. Now that's what I call rehabilitation." "Hold out his arm." A scuffle ensued, as the lizard naturally opposed the amputation and wanted to remain intact, as the grey ones meant him to be. "Please, princess, have a heart," he beseeched. "I've never wronged anyone before, and never will again. I'm just a fool, desperate for his family, who made a stupid choice. If you let me go, I won't ever come near the castle as long as I live. I swear it." His screams, those gut-wrenching pleas, were enough to turn your stomach. All was made worse by the swing of the unsheathing sword Red had snatched off the hip of the lone knight. The other two were uncomfortable, not wanting to watch her amble closer. Repositioning, one of them gave a petrified look to the only man with the power to intervene or overrule. But the frozen blank expression he received obviously meant help wasn't coming. The king was allowing this. "You are guilty of thievery. May you and thy neighbors never forget it," Red said, lifting the sword high over her head. Suddenly the blade thrusted downward, but stopped, inches away from cleaving the limb. "You know, the oddest theory just occurred to me," she told her whimpering plaything. "To take our food, the way you have, is to take it from the mouths of our soldiers. A soldier without a decent meal goes hungry, and that hunger is a distraction that could lead to the loss of life, be it theirs or the royal family's. So, in a roundabout way, you, my scaly friend, are a murderer, which makes your quandary much more serious. And to think I was just going to let you off with his hand, when it should be off with his head." Red again took up the weapon. This time she was stopped by White, who stayed her hand and put herself in front of the execution. "Stop it, Red. This is not our way." "This is my way. Get out of it," she snarled, arms cocked to strike. "Your way is saying a loaf of bread or a pound of rice is the equivalent of a life," White roared back, unintimidated. Even with the blade at her neck, she stood like a gargoyle perched over the defenseless. The siblings squared off this way until Red grew bored. lowering the sword and giving White the floor to converse. "What's your name, Mr. Lizard?" "That would be Bill, miss," he groaned as the knights took hold of his arms and brought him upward from prone, suspending his weight and reforming his stockade. He flinched when the princess knelt to talk to him, reaching out to raise his chin from the ground. But there was compassion in the way she touched his face. Something about the softness of her voice seemed to melt his anxieties. "And where do you live, Bill?" "A plains village, madam," he answered tranquilly, still resting in her hand. "Which would explain your need for food," she deduced. Angling her head, she appeared to be talking obliquely, but likely to her father or sister. "Those people don't have the protection of the desert or woodlands. Their means, their means of survival are out in the open, directly exposed to the Jabberwocky flight path. It's not just my family that's starving. It's my entire village. Everyone in the area," Bill reported in earnest as she stood. "There isn't much of a salvageable harvest left. We'd hunt and gather, but are scared to venture too far from our homes with the inevitability of attacks. Some of us folks have resorted to cannibalizing the Jabberwocky carcasses, but it's nothing to gorge ourselves on. It's terrible nasty carnivore meat that doesn't spread around the way it needs before it spoils in the sun. Your patrols have seen it, what we've had to do to make it out there. I know they have. We've seen them too, what happens with those monsters. I'd say we understand each other." "Release him," White commanded, beckoning for the sack of goods. Once the other knights stood Bill up, and he was free to go. He wiggled his tail and gussied his appearance. Handing it back to him, she prefaced, "You may take all you can carry back to your household. We will organize a small convoy to deliver supplies to the rest of your village and the others wishing for help." Watching her sister being showered with Bill's thanks and affections, Red was visibly upset by her verdict being undermined and reversed. She threw down her sword, storming past the king to get inside. She wasn't even sure he noticed. He only saw the younger one who ruined her training and hijacked her chance. Red was substituted for a sheepish shrug and an innocent smile. That she would be taking personally. Unfortunately, guys, that's going to wrap this one up early. I went ahead and looked forward and have seen that we are headed into some pretty beefy chapters, respectively, so I don't want to bog any episode down in particular with extra things that are going to take up a lot of time. So we're just going to kind of coast through chapter to chapter, probably singularly until we get to a point where obviously I can fit multiples in comfortably. But I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, guys, we'll see you later.